Right now on Morning News Now, Georgia on their mind. President Biden and former President Trump taking their all but official 2024 rivalry to the battleground state, clashing over the president's apology for using the term illegal to describe a suspected murderer.
And I shouldn't have used illegal. It's undocumented. I'm not going to treat any of these people with disrespect.
Biden should be apologizing for apologizing to this killer.
Plus, shutdown averted. President Biden signing a bill to keep most of the government open, at least for now. Also this morning, the Middle East on edge as Ramadan begins. More than 1 million displaced Palestinians now bracing for an Israeli offensive in Rafah. And at sea, efforts to bring much-needed aid to Gaza have stalled. We'll bring you the latest. And time could be running out for TikTok, with Congress set to vote on whether to ban the app nationwide. More on the controversial bill that could change how you scroll. And oh, what a night. That's right. This year's Oscars, certainly one to remember, with one of the biggest movies of the year taking home some of the big awards. Plus, Ryan Gosling proving he's more than enough with his highly anticipated performance. We'll take you to the red carpet for more of the big moments from Hollywood's biggest night. It truly, it was fantastic.
It was, and it started an hour earlier, so maybe you got to watch it, and you're watching us right now. Good morning, good to have you with us on this Monday. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. We're going to get started a new week this morning with the race for the White House. The general election may still be 8 months away, but we're already getting a taste of what this likely rematch between Joe Biden and Donald Trump will look like.
Over the weekend, the two candidates held dueling rallies in Georgia. That state's holding a primary tomorrow. Now, after their big wins on Super Tuesday, and with Nikki Haley now out of the race, the current and former presidents are taking aim at each other.
Our freedoms are literally on the ballot this November. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans are trying to take our freedoms away. And by the way, not all Republicans. This ain't your father's Republican Party.
We all heard Crooked Joe's angry, dark, hate-filled rant of a State of the Union address. Didn't it bring us together? Remember, he said, I'm going to bring the country together.
In an interview on MSNBC, President Biden said that he regrets referring to an undocumented immigrant as an illegal during his State of the Union address last week. NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard joined us now with the latest on the campaign trail. So let's start with President Biden's interview with MSNBC's Jonathan Capehart, addressing these comments he made in the State of the Union. Some Democrats wanted to see that apology, Republicans criticizing that apology. What more can you tell us about where the Biden campaign's at right now?
It was right. During the State of the Union address, the name Laken Riley, who is the young woman who was murdered allegedly by an undocumented immigrant from Venezuela. And Joe Biden did say her name up from that podium, as Republicans were calling on him to do. And when doing that, he referred to the killer, the alleged killer, as illegal. That is what prompted some backlash response from Democrats who criticized the use of that word. Take a listen to Joe Biden addressing that.
And I shouldn't have used illegal. It's undocumented. And look about the difference between Trump and me. One of the things I talked about on the border was that the way he talks about vermin, the way he talks about these people polluting the blood. I talked about what I'm not going to do, what I won't do. I'm not going to treat any of these people with disrespect.
So you regret using that word?
Yes.
Joe Biden giving this interview. We're now just 7.5 months away from the general election.
Let's talk about what we heard from former President Trump on this. He was also in Georgia. What were his comments on this apology?
Right. Dueling rallies, dueling events here in Georgia. And Donald Trump, of course, looking to capitalize off of this while in Georgia. Of course, the home state of where that young woman, Laken Riley, was murdered. Take a listen to his remarks from that stage.
That Joe Biden went on television and apologized for calling Laken's murderer an illegal. He didn't want to call him illegal. He apologized. He was an illegal immigrant. He was an illegal migrant. And he shouldn't have been in our country, and he never would have been under the Trump policy. And Biden should be apologizing for apologizing to this killer.
Of course, the influx of migrants into the United States has been a top concern for American voters, and Donald Trump looking to use this as a political opportunity to try to galvanize support for himself in a key critical state of Georgia.
One reason they're galvanizing support, they need money. President Biden and his campaign says they brought in $10 million in the 24 hours after the State of the Union speech. In that speech, he talked about his age, which he realizes is a huge issue for many voters. There's a new ad that's trying to address that issue. What more should we know about
Right.
that?
More than 20 million people around the country watched that State of the Union address. Of course, other folks saw it through other channels. And for Joe Biden, raising $10 million in 24 hours, that is a significant amount of money. I mean, compare that to the 24 hours after the mugshot came out when Donald Trump was arrested in Fulton County. Donald Trump's campaign raised just over $4 million. So in that advertisement that Joe Biden put out, he is talking about his age and talking about the wisdom and experience that his age allows him to provide to the job. So the Biden campaign, they are looking to utilize not just that speech, but also the fact that his age is a positive attribute for him in his campaign.
One other piece of news before we let you go. NBC News reporting that former President Trump will receive intelligence briefings after he officially secures the GOP nomination. Tell us about that.
Right. Since 1952, Harry Truman began offering presumptive nominees, the opposing party's presidential candidate, the opportunity to gather intelligence briefings. Now, this isn't all of the classified information or information on confidential sources, but it is a level of classified information in order to ensure a peaceful transfer of power if that opposing candidate were to win. Now, there were questions, would that same opportunity be made available to Donald Trump, especially after an indictment pertaining to his alleged mishandling of classified information at his Mar-a-Lago estate? The answer that we have is yes, that Donald Trump, beginning this summer, is expected to continue to receive that sort of a briefing despite that indictment.
All right, Vaughn, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Over the weekend, President Biden signed a major government funding bill into law that, at least for now, diffuses fears of a partial government shutdown.
The Senate voted 75-22 to approve the $460 billion package before Friday's midnight deadline. The move will keep the Departments of Agriculture, Justice, Transportation, and other government agencies running through September.
For more, we're joined by NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez. Gabe, great to see you. So this has got to be a major relief for the Biden administration. What is the White House saying about this last-minute deal?
Hi there, Savannah. Good morning. Well, certainly there have been a lot of anticipation on whether there would, in fact, be this partial government shutdown. But as you said, on Saturday, President Biden signing those appropriations bills, and the White House thanking top congressional leaders in both the House and Senate for their leadership on the issue. The Senate had voted on this on Friday. The House had done so on Wednesday. So now a partial government shutdown is avoided, Joe and Savannah.
So the deadlines just keep coming. They have 2 weeks to pass another bill to fund the Pentagon and Department of Homeland Security. Where do things stand there?
Yeah, Joe, the deadline for that is March 22nd, as you said, for funding the Pentagon and Department of Homeland Security. A top Democratic lawmaker says that negotiations for that package are still underway. There's a possibility there could be some short-term extension voted on this week. But as of now, there's that deadline, once again, March 22nd, to avoid a partial government shutdown for those agencies.
Gabe, earlier this morning, the White House released its budget that includes the plan that President Biden had laid out in the State of the Union address last week. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's right. And that budget plan includes $3 trillion in deficit reduction over the next 10 years. And it would pay for that by raising taxes on high earners and corporations. This is something that President Biden, as you said, did mention in his State of the Union address. But Joe and Savannah, the chances of this passing the Republican-led House are pretty much next to none. But it does serve as a way for the White House to really lay out its budget priorities as the 2024 presidential campaign ramps up. Back to you.
Gabe Gutierrez from the White House Lawn. Thank you so much.
This morning, Palestinian Muslims in Gaza are marking the start of the Islamic holy month of Ramadan under Israeli attacks. Both Israel and Hamas failed to agree to a ceasefire in time for the religious holiday.
It comes as aid organizations are racing to deliver much-needed food to Gaza's starving population. This ship carrying 200 tons of food was supposed to have set sail from Cyprus yesterday, but the government there says it remains docked due to technical difficulties. In an exclusive interview with MSNBC's Jonathan Capehart over the weekend, President Biden criticized Israel's prime minister for the massive death toll in Gaza and warned against a ground invasion of Rafah.
There's no red line. I'm going to cut off all weapons so they don't have the Iron Dome to protect them. They don't have. But there's red lines that if he crosses, and he cannot have 30,000 more Palestinians dead. He must pay more attention to the innocent lives being lost as a consequence of the actions taken. He's hurting, in my view, he's hurting Israel more than helping Israel.
NBC News international correspondent Raf Sanchez joins us now from Jerusalem. So, Raf, let's start with the humanitarian situation in Gaza. Why is this aid ship being held up in Cyprus? And what are relief agencies saying about efforts to try and get food into Gaza?
So, Joe, in terms of that aid ship, the food that is being loaded onto it comes from World Central Kitchen, the charity run by Chef Jose Andres. And World Central Kitchen is saying they are ready to go. They say technically there are no holdups. They say the issue here is diplomatic. They say diplomacy at this point is ongoing. They are not being specific about what that diplomatic holdup is, but it appears that they don't have agreement from all parties at this point to depart from Cyprus, head to the coast of Gaza, and begin delivering that aid. It does remain unclear what the so-called last mile of this delivery is going to look like, how this aid is actually going to make it off of this ship in the eastern Mediterranean to the people who so badly need it in northern Gaza. In terms of humanitarian organizations, we have heard about President Biden's plan for the U.S. military to build a temporary pier off the coast of Gaza. That is going to take 2 months, U.S. officials tell NBC News, and these humanitarian organizations say famine is already here in northern Gaza. They say around 20 children have died of malnutrition, dehydration in recent weeks. And the overwhelming message from humanitarian organizations, the UN, has been that these airdrops, the idea of getting food in from the sea, is not a substitute for getting more food in from land, either through Israel or through Egypt. And they say that needs to happen, and there needs to be safe conditions to actually distribute that food if there's going to be real chance of fending off famine in Gaza. Guys.
So, Raf, as we mentioned, Ramadan started today. You are in Jerusalem. Tell us, what is the mood like among Palestinian Muslims there? And what's this going to look like? Is Israel going to impose restrictions on worshippers at the Al-Aqsa Mosque? That's a key Muslim holy site there in Jerusalem.
Yeah, Savannah, there is a heaviness in Jerusalem right now. Ramadan is supposed to be a time of celebration, a time of being close to family, feeling close to God. But the streets here are empty. Our team has been inside the old city of Jerusalem earlier, and many of the shops that sell those distinctive Ramadan candies say nobody's buying this year. Our team spoke to a 38-year-old Palestinian man. He says this is the most painful Ramadan he can remember. And people here in Jerusalem are not underneath the bombs, but they are thinking about their fellow Palestinians in Gaza. And I can tell you the security presence in East Jerusalem right now is very intense. We've been seeing Israeli security patrols on the streets behind us. There is a checkpoint just a couple hundred yards from where we are that really looks like something that you'd see in the occupied West Bank as opposed to Jerusalem. You have Israeli troops up behind concrete barriers. So there is a real heaviness. In terms of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, there was a video making the rounds last night, verified by NBC News, that shows Israeli police hitting Palestinians with batons, with nightsticks in the streets of the old city last night as they were trying to get into the mosque for prayers. We asked the Israeli police about this. They say that they are trying to safely facilitate very large numbers, but I can tell you there is a lot of concern worldwide that the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the third holiest site in Islam, known as the Temple Mount to Jews, could be a tinderbox that spreads this conflict here to Jerusalem. Guys.
Raf, we heard earlier from President Biden rebuking Prime Minister Netanyahu over the death toll and humanitarian situation in Gaza. Talk to us a little bit about the growing frustration from the Biden administration and what Netanyahu makes of President Biden's comments.
Yeah, Joe, so the specific phrase that's got a lot of attention here is the president said Prime Minister Netanyahu is hurting Israel more than he is helping Israel. Now, we saw Prime Minister Netanyahu get in front of the cameras pretty shortly after that interview went out on MSNBC. He said he didn't know what the president meant by that. But he said that some of the positions he holds, which put him on a diplomatic collision course with the Biden administration, are supported by the Israeli public. And he gave a couple of examples. One, going into Rafah, that southernmost city in Gaza where more than 1 million Palestinians are sheltering, something the Biden administration says they should not do without a credible plan. He says the Israeli public supports that. He also says the Israeli public supports him in opposing the Palestinian Authority returning to Gaza, which is something the Biden administration says needs to happen. Guys.
All right. Raf Sanchez. Raf, thank you.
Thank you. This morning, Alaska Airlines says it is fully cooperating as the Department of Justice opens a criminal investigation into that blowout on a Boeing flight in January when a piece of plane broke away in midair. NBC News correspondent George Solis has more.
The Justice Department is conducting a criminal investigation into that mid-air scare on an Alaskan Airlines flight involving a MAX 9 jet where a door plug blew out over Portland, according to the Wall Street Journal. The Journal reporting investigators contacting pilots, flight attendants, and even passengers on board Flight 1282 that was forced to make an emergency landing where, fortunately, no one was hurt.
Alaska 1282,
the Justice Department provided no comment to NBC News. The focus of the investigation said to center on whether Boeing has complied with a previous settlement following a federal investigation into the airline's handling of the deadly jet crashes in 2018 and 2019 that killed 346 people. The company providing no comment to NBC News.
They're going to look pretty seriously at, is this a one-off or is this systemic?
In a preliminary report last month, the NTSB found 4 bolts needed to keep the door plug in place were missing. Alaska Airlines saying in a statement in part, it's normal for the DOJ to be conducting an investigation. We are fully cooperating and do not believe we are a target of the investigation. News of this criminal investigation comes as the NTSB has blasted Boeing for failing to turn in records about the blowout, a claim the company refutes. But in a letter to U.S. Senator Maria Cantwell, Boeing revealing they can't find any documentation on the removal of the door plug.
That's probably not a good answer either.
It's a horrible answer. And when I read that, I was shocked that, one, they don't have the documentation. They're required to have that documentation. And if not, then we're talking about a much deeper problem of procedural compliance.
Our thanks to George Solis for that report. Attorneys for passengers that were on that Alaska Airlines MAX 9 flight told NBC News they appreciate that the DOJ is approaching the incident with the seriousness it calls for, and they hope those responsible will be held accountable.
Time now for a look at weather. First came the rain, now the wind on the East Coast. Millions are under wind alerts this morning.
Meteorologist Michelle Grossman is with us in studio. Hey, Michelle, good morning.
Hey there, guys. Great to see you. And that was perfectly put. That's a big story today. We are dealing with leftover winds in the Northeast, parts of New England, and we're going to see really gusty winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour in some spots, especially this afternoon, this evening. That's going to cause power outages. It's going to bring some trees down and certainly see some airport delays as we go throughout the afternoon, evening hours. So this is what it looks like, that area of low pressure that brought us all that wet weather on Wednesday, bringing those chilly winds. So we're looking at temperatures below normal, also feeling a lot below normal with the winds gusting. And we're seeing some snow, too, in portions of the interior parts of the Northeast into New England. This is what radar looks like. Not a whole lot of snow to go, but we still have some snow at the higher elevations. Where you see this blue here, that is the snow falling. And that's what we're going to see over the next few hours. So we do have wind alerts, 62 million people impacted by wind alerts. We have wind advisories. We have high wind warnings. That includes Roanoke, also north of Asheville. We're going to see the winds really gusty as we go throughout the day, dying down later on tonight. So anywhere from 48 miles per hour in Albany through tonight, 48 in New York City, 48 in Atlantic City, 48 miles per hour in Boston. So that's going to be a big story as we're kind of heading out in the airports later on this afternoon and spring break for some of us. Winter alerts, too, nearly 3 million under winter alerts. We have winter storm warnings. That is in the pinkish color, and winter weather advisories. And we could see another 4 to 5 inches in some spots. That's where you're seeing those pink and purple colors, the higher elevations of New England and also upstate New York. That's a big story in the Northeast. As we move towards the middle of the country, big difference. Spring-like, we're looking at temperatures so well above normal, even 30, 40 degrees above what is normal for this time of year, into the 60s and 70s. And then out west, we're looking at a west system moving on shore that's bringing some lower elevation rain, some higher elevation snow today and also tomorrow. But look at some of these temperatures. In Sioux Falls, we're looking at 73. That's 34 degrees above normal, 75 in Des Moines, and Salina looking at 74. So, guys, we have winter in the east and a little bit spring-like in the middle of the country. Back to you.
All right. Thank you, Michelle. Sure. The cast of Oppenheimer is still probably celebrating this morning after dominating this year's Oscars.
Yeah, the film took home 7 wins, including Best Picture, Best Actor, and Best Director, while the film Poor Things was close behind with 4 wins. Jimmy Kimmel returned as host for Hollywood's biggest night, and this year's show did not disappoint.
Eric Davis, the managing editor for Fandango, joins us now with all the highlights. Good to have you with us. So let's talk about the winners first. What were some of the notable wins from last night?
Yeah, I mean, despite the collective Kenergy we were all feeling this morning, it was Oppenheimer that ultimately toppled Barbie, at least at the Academy Awards. 7 wins, becomes the 3rd highest grossing Best Picture winner ever. Christopher Nolan takes home his first Oscar for Best Director. And of course, the men. Cillian Murphy winning Best Actor. He nodded to the 20-year collaboration he's had with Christopher Nolan. Also, Robert Downey Jr. winning Best Supporting Actor. He thanked his bad childhood.
Right.
He also,
before the Academy.
Yeah, he also thanked his wife, compared himself to a rescue dog, and that she rescued him and really saved his life.
That was such a sweet moment. There were a lot of those, a lot of emotional moments, including Divine Joy Randolph broke down in tears when she was accepting her speech when she won for Best Supporting Actress. This is for her role in The Holdovers. Let's play a little bit of what she said.
I thank you to all the people who have stepped in my path and has been there for me, who has ushered me and guided me. I am so grateful to all you beautiful people out here. For so long, I've always wanted to be different. And now I realize I just need to be myself.
Tell us more about this touching moment and other ones that stood out to you.
Yeah, it was really great, and she was crying. Paul Giamatti was actually crying in the audience. He co-starred in The Holdovers with her. Really, I mean, these are the Oscars, right? First-time nominee, first-time winner. That raw emotion is kind of what you saw. I thought that was a great way to open up the night. Honestly, one of the bigger surprises, Emma Stone winning Best Actress. Another really emotional moment. I think she was in shock. Her dress kind of broke, so she was, you know, talking about that. But she was overwhelmed. This is her 2nd Oscar. I think Emma Stone now is an elite actress in terms of our era. Also, director of 20 Days of Mariupol, the Best Documentary winner, coming out saying this is the first ever Oscar win for Ukraine. Of course, he also said, I wish I didn't have to make this movie in the first place. So I thought that was also very emotional moment.
Yeah, this has been obviously last year a tough year for Hollywood because of the strike. Jimmy Kimmel took time to not only acknowledge that, but also to thank the Teamsters for their support. Let's take a look at that.
The reason we were able to make a deal is because of the people who rallied beside us. So before we celebrate ourselves, let's have a very well-deserved round of applause for the people who work behind the scenes, the Teamsters, the truck drivers, the lighting crew, sound, camera, gaffers, grips. That's right. All the people who refused to cross the picket lines, there they are.
That was a moment. The Oscars are all about the moments. Any other moments stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, that moment, of course, I'm just Ken. I mean, Ryan Gosling's performance of that, I think, was the highlight of the night. Also, I think it's going to go down as one of the all-time Oscar moments. I mean, of course, he's paying homage to Marilyn Monroe here. Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. He's in all hot pink. I mean, he had the crowd singing. It was like one of the first sing-alongs, the choreography.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, just an amazing moment here. I thought this was really great. Also, John Cena coming out naked on stage to present Best Costume, I thought was a highlight of the night. A lot of people,
brave man.
Yeah, a lot of people, and he was really naked. People were taking pictures in intermission showing that. So, I mean, you know, what you do for the Oscars, John Cena, really, really great there.
Maybe he'll get an Emmy next year for that. I don't know how that would work, but, you know.
That was quite the moment. I was cracking up.
Eric Davis, thank you so much for recapping with us this morning. We appreciate it.
Good to see you. Much more to come here on Morning News Now. Later this hour, TikTok. Congress set to vote on a bill that would ban TikTok nationwide. More on the controversial crackdown that could mean big changes in the world of social media.
Up first after the break, royal retraction. Several news outlets sounding the alarm on this photo released by Kensington Palace. Why it's raising new concerns about the health of Kate Middleton. Plus, the new statement just posted online. Stay with us. Morning News Now. We'll be right back. Welcome back. The U.S. military is racing to evacuate non-essential personnel from the U.S. embassy in Haiti. The mission comes as the country spirals out of control amid a renewed surge of gang violence. The prime minister there now facing growing pressure to resign. NBC News correspondent Marissa Parra has the latest.
Yeah, humanitarians I've spoken to who have spent decades working in Haiti explained that the crisis there was bad before, but this is worse than it's ever been.
An evacuation amid a country in chaos. A U.S. military operation airlifting non-essential embassy employees out of Haiti. A move approved by President Biden, who a U.S. official says remains deeply concerned. The administration also boosting embassy security. U.S. Southern Command saying no Haitians were on board that flight. Last week, the White House emphasizing the urgency of the crisis.
We think about food, health care, clean water, and other forms of critical assistance through UN and NGO partners to help people in need.
A state of emergency in Haiti now extended to next month. The UN reporting 5.5 million people, almost half the entire country's population, are in need of humanitarian aid. Years of political violence came to a boiling point last weekend when gangs attacked the capital, Port-au-Prince, and set free thousands of violent criminals from the prisons. Haiti's Prime Minister Ariel Henry still in Puerto Rico, forced to land there, as calls for his resignation now growing louder. Haiti's main airports shut down, leaving Haitians stranded.
It's been bad before. This is probably the worst. I think we are reaching peak crisis.
Mercy Corps has been working to reduce violence in Haiti since 2019.
The situation in Haiti is delicate, and it is important to make the right decisions moving forward. And I'm sure the U.S. government, just like all governments, do not want to make the situation worse.
Leaders from Caribbean nations will be meeting on Monday in Kingston, Jamaica, to discuss what they call a dire situation, hoping to decide on a resolution that will bring stability and relief to Haiti, but stressing time is not on their side.
All right, Marissa Parra, thank you.
Well, now to new developments in London over the controversies surrounding that new photo of Kate Middleton, the Princess of Wales.
Picture agencies took the extraordinary step of sending out notices like the one you see here, telling media outlets not to run the photograph over concerns it had been manipulated. Now, in the last hour this morning, the princess herself apologizing for altering the image. She wrote on social media, "Like many amateur photographers, I do occasionally experiment with editing. I wanted to express my apologies for any confusion the family photograph we shared yesterday caused."
For more on this, we are joined by NBC News royal contributor and royal editor of the British Sunday Times, Roya Nika. Roya, good morning. Thanks for joining us. So just catch us up on this picture being released over the weekend, when people started questioning whether something was up with it, and then how unusual it is that we just got that statement from the princess herself.
Well, good morning. It has been a really quite wild 24 hours here in royal news. This photo was supposed to quell all the gossip and rumour and very strange conspiracy theories that have been going around on social media for the last few weeks since Kate had that abdominal surgery a couple of months ago in January. And initially when it dropped, it looked like a very lovely, positive, very wholesome image taken by William at Windsor earlier this week, which was supposed to sort of show that Kate is indeed doing well and recovering, like Kensington Palace keep telling us she is. But then people started noticing slight discrepancies in the photographs, slight things that looked like they'd been photoshopped. And then last night, we had four of the biggest international picture agencies pulling it, saying it had sort of breached their manipulation, digital retouching guidelines, which have been tightened up recently because of all the concerns over AI. As you said, we've just had that extraordinary personal statement from Kate this morning saying, "I'm sorry, guys, I'm just an amateur photographer. Like all of you, sometimes, I try and make things look a little bit better. Perhaps all the children weren't smiling in one picture together," and apologising for all the confusion. But it's very rare that we get personal apologies from members of the royal family over pictures that have been put out. So it's been a wild 24 hours.
What kind of manipulation did picture agencies think was going on here?
Well, it's interesting. None of the picture agencies that withdrew it have yet said, this is what we think has been done. What we've seen is various people on social media, in some areas of the media, look at the sleeve on Princess Charlotte's jumper doesn't quite line up. There's a pattern on on Louis's jumper, something to do with Kate's zip. I think just to be clear, I don't think there's any doubt over the authenticity that William took this picture last week of all of them together. But it may be that, as lots of parents will know, sometimes you don't get all the children lining up, smiling at the same time, and you might take bits from here and there. There's a question mark over that. But we have been asking the palace, can you either publish the original photo, which I don't think we're going to get, or can you set out exactly what was changed? And I think some media outlets are starting to get their picture desks to sort of see what the original image might have looked like. Not huge differences, just sort of small things that make it look a little bit better.
I mean, look, it was no secret that there's been a lot of talk about the Princess of Wales even prior to this picture. I mean, it was all over the internet, kind of questions, concerns about her well-being and her whereabouts. And then this picture made so much news because it was the first official image of Kate since she had that surgery and since there's been so many questions surrounding her. Rumors, speculation, all that. How do you think that this admission of editing the photo feeds into kind of this frenzy of concern?
I think hopefully most people will look at that statement from Catherine this morning and just, say, a lot of parents out there will know that they do exactly the same with their family photos, and she's no different. She is a woman who is recovering from major surgery. I think, most of the media here have been very respectful of that and not speculative over what's been going on. They wanted to keep things very private. I think the sort of wildness that we've seen in the last 24 hours over this photo it shows you that things are very febrile here at the moment with the royal family. We have a king who's not doing public engagements. We have the Princess of Wales, one of the most popular members of the royal family, not doing public engagements. So though we are told she will be back after Easter, but I think there's a sort of a hole in a vacuum there that is being filled a little bit sometimes by perhaps some unnecessary commentary.
Roya, Nika, thank you very much for joining us.
Coming up, joining forces, U.S. Marines and a dozen allies now training together in the Arctic. When we come back, an exclusive look at what's being called the largest NATO exercise since the Cold War.
And a sinking feeling, new concerns after a startling new study shows several cities are sinking. This is Morning News Now. We are back with an NBC News exclusive, a rare look at U.S. Marines training in the Arctic. It's a major test of NATO's military capabilities in the region as tensions grow between Russia and the West. NBC News international correspondent Josh Letterman has more from northern Norway.
The frosty Arctic is the new battleground in a growing military competition between Russia and the West. The U.S. Marines and a dozen allies joining forces for war games in northern Norway as part of the largest NATO exercises since the Cold War. U.S. and NATO troops are practicing storming a beach from the sea and the air as they work to defend NATO territory from any threat.
I'll go ahead and continue maintaining airway, and I'll grab a leg.
In this mass casualty drill, languages blend together as American and Norwegian troops work shoulder to shoulder. These war games taking place not far from Russia's border on NATO's northern front line. As global warming melts sea ice, the U.S., Russia, and China are all seeking to expand their Arctic foothold. For the Marines, it's a sharp shift after decades fighting in the hot, dry climates of the Middle East. After a rocky journey through the mountains, we reach Marines dug in on the mountainside. At night, the temperatures can drop below zero.
We had Marines who had never been in the snow before coming to Norway.
The scenario, repelling an invasion by a major hostile power from the east.
You see in multiple vehicles.
And Moscow is watching. Norwegian officials tell NBC News they've detected Russian vessels nearby spying on the exercises.
Is it easier for an adversary to hide in snowy forest than it is, for example, in a desert?
I'd say it depends on the conditions. Here on a day like this, their snow tracks would be left. But if it was a snowstorm, those snow tracks would rapidly be closed.
These Marines have spent nearly 2 weeks here, sleeping up to 6 to a tent, boiling snow for water, even praying in the snow.
Amen. Go in peace, serve the Lord.
Lance Corporal Cooper Corey from Massachusetts joined the Marines a year ago.
My first time touching a ski pole was here. I fell in love with skiing.
How'd it go?
Oh, I fell a lot. But, I had fun, biggest smile on my face.
A forceful message from the U.S. and its allies.
Anywhere we go, I know we can fight. I know we can thrive.
Our thanks to Josh Letterman for that report.
Now to a warning involving America's coastal cities and climate change. New research shows America's coastal cities are sinking, and that's raising concerns that more people in the U.S. will be at risk for flooding as sea levels continue to rise. CNBC senior climate correspondent Diana Olick joins us now with more on this. Diana, good morning.
Good morning, Joe. Yeah, we already know that as the Earth warms and glaciers melt, sea level rise will increase. But we're now learning of another harmful effect of climate change that could make that even worse. This is what Baltimore, Maryland looked like in early January after a heavy rainstorm. But it doesn't always take a storm for the city to flood. So-called nuisance flooding is increasing, not just because the sea is rising, but because the land is sinking, more than doubling the potential damage.
So in this area, you do see nuisance flooding?
Yes, yeah, particularly right here, in the promenade. Grace Hansen is coastal planner for the city of Baltimore.
When you have nuisance flooding, it's basically saying it's an inconvenience. But when you think of the promenade here as flooded, some people can't get to businesses or they can't get to work.
Coastal Baltimore is sinking by more than 2 millimeters per year.
And to me and you, that doesn't seem like a lot by any means. But what becomes an issue is when it's not uniform and you can have building foundation sinking faster than the other side of the building. And that's where you'll see the foundation is not stable.
And coastal land is sinking around the world, especially on the east coast of the U.S., from New York to Norfolk, according to a new study from Virginia Tech and the U.S. Geological Survey. In some areas, it's sinking as much as 5 millimeters a year. Sea level rise is about 3 millimeters a year.
We expect to have a doubling of the frequency of flooding.
Shirzai and his team used space-based radar satellites to build digital maps of land over many years in order to see where it's sinking most. They then built the first high-resolution maps of this, showing East Coast land sinking anywhere from 2 to 5 millimeters a year, affecting more than 2 million people and 800,000 properties.
The study says that when you add the sinking of the land to sea level rise, it actually doubles the frequency of flooding and cuts in half the amount of time that both cities and coastal residents have to prepare.
And that has profound consequences on the flood adaptation strategies that have already been developed. Areas including New York's JFK and LaGuardia airports are seeing land sink at more than 2 millimeters a year. And why is land sinking? Climate change is causing drought, forcing us to pump more groundwater and to build more dams to store water.
In terms of groundwater extraction, that, is primarily one of the reasons why Baltimore is sinking.
Baltimore is surrounded by more than half a dozen dams, which reduce the supply of sediment going to the coast, thereby causing the land to sink. Even as water becomes more scarce, Shirzai says we need to mitigate the sinking of the land in the next decade, or it will severely impact the integrity of buildings and infrastructure.
It would affect bridges, pipelines, railways, runways of airports, and that would translate into trillions of dollars loss and cost of the repair.
Okay, so what do? Well, there are several options. First, recycle water by treating wastewater and sewage, putting wider restrictions on water uses, especially in landscaping, or capturing rain and banking it better. One project in Virginia is pumping groundwater back into aquifers and treating it in wastewater plants. Whatever the option, the sinking, Joe, just needs to stop.
Just an important topic, Diana. Thank you for digging into that for us. We appreciate it.
Really important. Coming up, controversy on Capitol Hill. Lawmakers set to vote on a bill that would ban TikTok across the country.
After the break, we'll have more on the proposal that could have impacts beyond just one app. You're watching Morning News Now.
Welcome back. This week, Congress could vote on a bill that would change the social media landscape as we know it. The House will weigh whether to approve bipartisan legislation that would ban the platform TikTok in the U.S. unless it's sold by its Chinese parent company, ByteDance. President Biden had this to say about the bill.
Mr. President, do you still support banning TikTok? Would you sign that bill?
If they pass it, I'll sign it.
TikTok responded to the bill saying, quote, the government is attempting to strip 170 million Americans of their constitutional right to free expression. This will damage millions of businesses, deny artists an audience, and destroy the livelihoods of countless creators across the country. Over the weekend, Meet the Press moderator Kristen Welker spoke with Senator Lindsey Graham about his stance on the ban. Here's some of that conversation.
Hello there, Joe and Savannah. This week on Meet the Press, I spoke with Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. Here's what he had to say about the House's plan to vote on a bill that would crack down on TikTok. The House is planning to vote, as you know, this coming week on a bill that would force the Chinese company to sell TikTok or face being banned. Trump initially favored banning TikTok. Now he's opposed. He's expressing his opposition. Do you support banning TikTok? Where do you fall?
I think the goal is to make sure American data that TikTok collects doesn't fall in the hands of the Communist Chinese Party. I'm really conflicted here. I know this about social media. They're ruining America. Sexual predators abound on these sites. You can't sue social media companies. There's no regulatory body. That's what I'm focused on. Banning TikTok, maybe that's necessary to protect American data from China, but if you can find a way to avoid that, that'd be good too.
You were a strong supporter of it in 2020, though. Do you no longer support it?
I understand people like TikTok. I would like to keep TikTok running, but not have our data used by the Communist Chinese Party. How will you vote on this?
I
don't know yet. I mean, I'm just being honest with you. I am definitely conflicted. But one thing I'm not conflicted about, every social media company should be sued if they do damage to you and your family. They're protected from lawsuits. Section 230 needs to go.
You can see my full interviews and a lot more at meetthepress.com. You can also get more Meet the Press right here on NBC News Now every weekday at 4 p.m.
All right, Kristen, thank you.
Let's bring in NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ryan Nobles for more on this. Ryan, good morning. So walk us through what some of the biggest concerns among lawmakers are and what this bill hopes to do.
Well, probably the biggest concern for lawmakers, Savannah, is just the volume of people that use the TikTok platform around the country. We're talking hundreds of millions of people. A lot of them use it as part of their livelihood, these content creators that have become very popular throughout the country. So there's just this overall concern about the consumer impact that it would have to ban such a huge social media platform. But it really goes beyond that. There's also constitutional concerns, First Amendment freedom of speech concerns, and also regulatory concerns about the ability for the federal government to just swoop in and say this particular business can exist while other similar businesses can exist. Now, obviously, there's a lot of differences because of its connection to the Chinese government and the Chinese Communist Party. But this is a very complicated issue. And even though there does appear to be broad bipartisan support to try and figure out something to do, it's been difficult for Congress to come up with legislation that solves all the problems that they're looking to fix.
So, Ryan, it's been nearly a year since TikTok CEO Shouzi Chu testified before Congress talking about the security concerns surrounding the app. What kind of changes have we seen from TikTok since then? What else are they saying responding to this proposed law?
Well, if you talk to the lawmakers that want to pass this bill, they feel like TikTok has not been responsive at all. They're very concerned about the ability for ByteDance, the company that owns TikTok, to have access to the data of millions of Americans on a day-to-day basis. They feel that they haven't put enough safeguards in place to prevent that from happening. In reality, there's an issue of trust here between members of Congress and the company ByteDance. They just do not believe ByteDance when they say that there's no ability for the Chinese government to have access to Americans' data. That's why they think the only way to solve this problem is to separate ByteDance from TikTok. As we've already talked about, that's a really complicated problem and one that they haven't been able to figure out completely.
On screens a moment ago, viewers were seeing something else that was kind of really complicated this whole thing and also made it quite interesting, was that TikTok actually did this whole pressure campaign where they sent out a notification to users sort of geolocating them to call their representatives, say, do not pass this. There's that notification right there. Ryan, so not everyone's on board with this, though. I mean, New York Congressman Jamal Bowman posted a TikTok last week where he said this bill is crazy. What do we think in terms of support? Do other people feel that way? And walk us through the steps that happen next, especially since, as we just played for our viewers, the president did say he would sign this.
Yeah, well, first of all, that lobbying campaign where they used the platform to encourage their users to call their members of Congress was the biggest cell phone in the history of lobbying. It certainly backfired. It turned a lot of members that were on the fence off, and they ended up voting for it in committee. But secondly, I do think that there is the real possibility that it passes the House this week. It does seem as though there's enough inertia in that direction. But there are a number of senators, along constitutional kind of personal liberty lines have said that they're really concerned about this idea that, A, you could potentially rip the platform away from everyday Americans, but also that you could put this sort of pressure on a campaign on a big company to prevent this from happening. So, there's a lot that needs to be worked out. There's even the possibility that it passes the House, goes to the Senate tweaks it, and maybe they send it back to the House. But this isn't something that's going to happen tomorrow. If you have a TikTok account, you don't have to worry about it going away in the immediate future. But down the line, there's no doubt that the federal government wants to do something to try and regulate this platform because they are concerned not only about its connection to the Chinese government, but the impact that it's having on everyday Americans.
Ryan Nobles, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
More financial headlines, starting with what's coming up this week on Wall Street and what's happening with your money.
CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us with that and other news. Silvana, good morning.
Savannah, Joe, good morning to you. All right, well, Wall Street could feel more pressure this week as the markets come off a negative week, with the Dow suffering its worst week since October, and investors cashing in some profits from the rally led by AI chip maker NVIDIA and other momentum and mega cap tech stocks. Now, the focus will shift this week to two key reports on inflation with consumer and producer prices, which could offer further support for the Federal Reserve to start cutting interest rates this summer. The Biden administration is asking United Health to expedite payments to healthcare providers following the recent cyber attack of its Change Healthcare unit. Bloomberg reports officials from Health and Human Services and the Labor Department are urging United Health to ensure no provider is impacted by cash flow challenges resulting from the incident. The hack, which occurred last month, has affected parts of Change Health's network that handle payments and medical claims. And Nintendo and animation studio Illumination are working on a second Super Mario Brothers movie, seeking to recreate the surprise box office success of the first movie, which generated nearly $1.4 billion worldwide. The new film will be produced by Illumination and the video game's original creator and is scheduled for release in 2026. And like the first movie, it will be distributed by Universal Pictures, which is owned by Comcast, guys.
All right, Silvana Henao, thank you so much.
You got it.
Coming up, branching out in the world of STEM.
When we come back, how one nonprofit is working to increase representation in science, technology, engineering, and math. Stay with us. You're watching Morning News Now.
Welcome back. The Iowa women's basketball team and its fans are celebrating yet again this morning, clinching their third consecutive Big Ten tournament title. Caitlin Clark and her Hawkeyes bested Nebraska yesterday. It was an overtime nail-biter in Minneapolis. Iowa certainly had their work cut out for them in the first half. Nebraska had an 11-point lead at one point, but once halftime hit, Clark was firing on all cylinders. Iowa pulled themselves out of the trenches, sealing the deal with a 94-89 victory. And now comes the NCAA tournament. We'll see what happens there.
So cool. I mean, she's just on fire. It's awesome. All right. Thanks, Joe.
Yep.
We end this hour with a nonprofit group in New York City that's aiming to bring more diversity to the STEM field. And they're starting in communities where that type of education is not always available. NBC News correspondent Maya Eaglin has the story.
Do you think more kids should learn how to code?
Yeah, because if you learn how to code, you can be like an engineer or work at Google and get a big job, and you can live your life.
Change the world.
Yeah.
The tech industry has a long-standing problem with diversity, and Jason Gibson is trying to change that.
I wanted to make it easily accessible to the families that live here.
That change is starting in rooms like these here in New York. More specifically, the New York City Housing Authority, or NYCHA for short. It's the largest public housing authority in the country with more than 500,000 residents, a quarter of them under the age of 18. And Jason wants to give all these kids new opportunities.
The goal is to have Hood Code running simultaneously in each one after school and during the summer, every day.
Hood Code is a nonprofit that began in 2019. Since then, Gibson and his team of instructors, mostly high school students and recent college grads, have helped many of these kids realize that a career in tech is not out of reach.
I didn't have a computer till basically high school, and I didn't even know that jobs in coding existed. I really did not know that it was a field that was accessible to us.
In some ways, neither did Gibson.
So I came up with the idea during my incarceration in 2017. You know, I've always been an entrepreneur.
Gibson says he thought maybe a career in the tech industry could have kept him out of the criminal justice system. And he used his entrepreneurial spirit to get others on board, sponsors and community members, to make sure his program would be free for students and a paid job for tutors.
The easiest part about coding is the fun. The best thing about coding is that you get to use your imagination. It feels like a game.
But if these kids do decide to go in tech, there are still challenges ahead. Black employees made up 8% of the IT workforce in 2022, according to the IT trade group CompTIA. And the numbers at some of the biggest tech companies like X, Meta, and Google show similar gaps.
And then you can hit copy.
Shigo, one of Hood Code's tutors, says these kids have already been through obstacles and are not discouraged.
The passion, the drive that these kids have is something that you don't see in like your ordinary kid, because I know that they had to work 10 times harder to be here.
And now with $200,000 from the David Prize, a no-strings-attached award given to New York-based innovators, Hood Code is more determined than ever to make real change.
What do you wish more people knew about the students coming into this program?
I wish people knew about some of the creativeness that the students have, the ambitions that the students have, the abilities that the students have, and the interests. I think people kind of have stereotypes or, their own beliefs about just neighborhoods like these in general, and a lot of times they're wrong.
Maya Eaglin, NBC News.
So important and so young to learn those skills.
And just neat when they say, I didn't even know you could have a job in that. It's something like this exposes you to that. Great report, Maya.
All right, it's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Stick around, though. The news continues right now. Good morning. Happy Monday. I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, a nasty swing state showdown over the weekend that's setting the stage for a bitter battle for the White House. President Biden and former President Trump hosting dueling events in battleground Georgia. They're sharpening their attacks while making their cases to voters. We'll have their messages coming up. Aerospace giant Boeing is under increased scrutiny this morning. The Justice Department launching an investigation into that scary Alaska Airlines mid-air blowout that happened back in January. But what exactly are officials looking into? We'll dig deeper in just a moment. Controversy out of Kensington Palace. Some big photo agencies sent scrambling, racing to take down the first reported picture of Princess Kate since undergoing abdominal surgery earlier this year. More on those widespread kill notices and what the Princess of Wales is now saying about it. Plus, all of the big moments and big wins from last night's Academy Awards. Oppenheimer racking up even more trophies, and everyone is feeling the Kenergy this morning.
Oh, yeah.
For that incredible performance from Ryan Gosling.
So
and
epic.
Dozens and dozens of Kens.
It was so fantastic.
We'll dig into it all in a little bit. Let's begin this hour with what's shaping up to be a long and fiery general election campaign ahead.
With President Biden and former President Trump headed towards a likely 2020 rematch, the leading candidates for the White House took aim at each other over the weekend in dueling rallies in Georgia ahead of Tuesday's primary in the state. NBC's Garrett Haake has the latest on the campaign trail.
This weekend, a clear reminder of Georgia's battleground importance. The closest swing state in 2020, decided by less than 12,000 votes, and now the stage of the first split-screen showdown of the general election. The presidential campaign taking shape after a swing state showdown this weekend in Georgia.
Hello, Georgia.
In his first rally as the GOP's presumptive nominee, Donald Trump taking a dark turn, mocking President Biden's State of the Union address and the lifelong stutter he deals with.
I'm going to bring the country together.
The former president lashing out at his successor.
Everything Joe Biden touches turns to everything.
Fewer than 100 miles away, President Biden firing back.
But we all know Donald Trump sees a different America. An American story of resentment, revenge, and retribution. That's not me.
The president's campaign boasting of raising $10 million in the 24 hours following the State of the Union and firing off a $30 million ad blitz with a new commercial addressing one of his biggest vulnerabilities.
Look, I'm not a young guy. That's no secret. But here's the deal. I understand how to get things done for the American people.
On another potential vulnerability, immigration, the president telling MSNBC's Jonathan Capehart he regretted referring to the suspect in Georgia college student Laken Riley's murder as, quote, an illegal.
And I shouldn't have used illegal. It's undocumented.
Mr. Trump, who says he met with Riley's family before his event, responding.
He was an illegal immigrant. He was an illegal migrant. And he shouldn't have been in our country, and he never would have been under the Trump policy.
And in more fallout from the State of the Union, Alabama Senator Katie Britt, who gave the Republican response, now under growing scrutiny after attacking President Biden and telling a story of a girl who was sex trafficked by cartels.
We wouldn't be okay with this happening in a third world country. President Biden's border policies are a disgrace.
It later emerged the incident Britt was likely referencing took place under the Bush administration, not Biden's. Britt's speech mocked by Saturday Night Live.
And rest assured, every detail about it is real, except the year, where it took place, and who was president when it happened.
On Sunday, Britt pressed on the issue.
But to be clear, the story that you relayed is not something that's happened under the Biden administration, that particular person.
Well, I very clearly said I spoke to a woman who told me about when she was trafficked when she was 12. So I didn't say a teenager. I didn't say a young woman.
A busy week ahead for President Biden with 3 more swing state appearances scheduled. Nothing on the public calendar for former President Trump.
All right, Garrett Haig, thank you so much. Well, there are intensifying concerns this morning over safety in the skies as the Justice Department opens a criminal investigation into that incident on an Alaska Airlines flight in January where a door plug on a Boeing MAX 737 airplane blew off mid-flight.
Alaska Airlines says it is cooperating with the investigation.
NBC News correspondent Stephanie Goss joins us with more on this. Stephanie, good morning. So what is the Justice Department looking into exactly?
Well, Alaska Airlines says it's not the target of this investigation, and the investigators are looking into that incident on January 5th, that terrifying moment when the door panel flew off of Alaska Airlines' Boeing 737 MAX 9 plane. The airline saying that it is normal for an investigation like this to take place. Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that multiple passengers and crew have been questioned about the incident. No one was actually hurt in that incident. It was remarkable when you look at those pictures that we've been looking at now for weeks. But multiple passengers, dozens, have hired attorneys to represent them. One of those attorneys spoke over the weekend in response to this news about the investigation and said that his clients are looking for accountability. Neither Boeing nor the DOJ has commented on the investigation, guys.
So what's definitely normal is the National Transportation Safety Board is already investigating this incident. What's the latest on that one?
Yeah, that's, I know, on top of this DOJ investigation, that's been ongoing. The NTSB chair last week in a Senate hearing accused Boeing, the manufacturer, of not turning over documents and information that it asked for. Boeing then sent a letter to Senator Maria Cantwell, saying that those documents never existed, even though the manufacturer itself says it's part of their policy to create documents about a door panel, or in this case, a door panel, but in any manufacturing process. Even so, the NTSB chair said in that hearing that that could also be a problem for Boeing if those documents were never created.
Stephanie, separate from this investigation and separate from that particular incident, the door plug incident, there have been these other scary moments for passengers on flights, even just in the last few days. Remind us of those.
Yeah, there have been a few, and related to United Airlines, there were 2 flights that left San Francisco's airport. One of them had to turn around. Another couple of flights at Houston, there were some problems with hydraulics. There was also an American Airlines flight that had some issues. You know, it's worth pointing out that actually incidents like these would affect you if you fly a lot, something like I guess the statistic is you have a 100% chance of experiencing one of these only if you fly more than 27,000 flights over 27,000 years. I don't know. It's something crazy. The point is that you're far safer getting on a plane than you are getting in your car or even walking down a New York City street block.
There you go. All right, well, good to keep in mind. Good context. Stephanie, thank you so much.
Let's check in with Michelle Grossman for a look at the weather forecast this week.
Michelle, good morning. What can we expect?
Good morning, guys. Well, we're looking at a few things as we go throughout this work week. We're looking first today in the west, a series of storms moving onshore. We're going to see more lower elevation rain, some higher elevation snow. It's going to be windy, too, along the coast. The middle of the country, nice and dry, lots of sunshine, but it's going to be warm. We're looking at record warm temperatures, 10, 20, 30, even 40 degrees above what is typical for this time of year. We're going to be into the 60s and 70s. Unfortunately, that warmer air, some really dry conditions, low humidity, some gusty winds. That's going to increase the fire risk in portions of the central and southern plains. Then we're looking out west. We're dry in the southeast. We're dry for most of the mid-Atlantic into the northeast. It's really in the interior parts of the northeast into New England. We're watching that last oomph of that storm that came through this weekend. It's bringing very windy conditions. That's going to be the biggest impact today, where we could see winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour in some spots. We're going to see power outages. We're going to see some trees and power lines down, and also probably seeing some airport delays. We're already seeing this at that hour, and we're going to see the winds picking up later on this afternoon into the evening. Then as we near Wednesday, we're once again starting out in the west, we're looking at Rockies snow, so intermountain snow. We're looking at some snow along the Pacific Northwest. Once again, some rain into the central plains, dry in the southern plains, but still really, really warm from the southern plains, central plains into portions of the Midwest. Sunny and mild. That warm air is going to move off to the northeast, so we're going to be well above normal on Wednesday, Thursday, even into Friday. And nice and dry from New England all the way down to portions of the southeast. Some parts of Florida could see some rain. Things changed on Friday, though. We're looking at snowy conditions in parts of the southwest, parts of the Rockies, some lower elevation rain as well. Southern plains, same story. It's going to be a rainy day on Friday. We're looking at some snow in the Midwest and the northern plains. So lots going on Friday. A storm threat throughout portions of the Tennessee Valley and the Mississippi Valley into the southeast, and rain returns for the mid-Atlantic all the way into the northeast and also New England. Could see some higher elevation snow in New England as well. So today, more winter-like today. We're looking at that area of low pressure that brought us that really wet Saturday and also parts of Sunday. That's still impacting us. It's moving off into the Canadian Maritimes, but still bringing those really gusty winds. And once again, we'll see winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour. That's going to cause a few problems with power outages and also airport delays. 62 million people under wind alerts. We have wind advisories. We have winter storm, high wind warnings as well. That's where you see the purple. So Roanoke, you have a high wind warning. Winter alerts as well. Nearly 3 million people under winter alerts because we're looking at snow falling in the higher elevations of the upstate New York. We're also looking at New England. Where you see the pink, that's your winter storm warning. Also wind advisories. Now we're going to see up to 4 or 5 inches of rain. We had a lot of rain yesterday. It's heavy, wet snow. We're going to add to that today. Not a whole lot. We're going to start to see that wind down by this afternoon, evening hours. We're still contending with that this morning. That spring warmth, that's a big story. Temperatures so above normal for this time of year, feeling summer-like in spots. Temperatures into the mid-70s in Des Moines. That's 28 degrees above what is typical for this time of year. 70s in Sioux Falls, Salina, down to Oklahoma City. Also looking really warm in parts of the Tennessee Valley into the Ohio Valley. Detroit, you're 55 today. 55, that's 10 degrees above what is typical for this time of year. And then we're going to see that spring warmth moving into the northeast as well, but still looking at 70s in the central plains. And New York City by tomorrow, 61. That's 12 degrees above normal. Wednesday, even warmer. Thursday, even warmer than that.
Once we get through this wind, I'm very excited for the week ahead.
Me too. I know this wind kind of stinks.
I know.
You can feel it like howling out there, and it's chilly.
Intense. It really is. Thanks, Michelle.
Sure.
Now to Hollywood's biggest night, the 96th Annual Academy Awards. It was a huge night for Oppenheimer, as expected, which took home many of the night's top prizes, including the big one, Best Picture. NBC News correspondent Kaylee Hartung joins us now with the highlights. Kaylee, good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. What a night it was. Even after the show was forced to start 5 minutes late, as hundreds of protesters calling for a ceasefire in Gaza put Hollywood in total gridlock, Oscars night found its footing with deserving winners, emotional moments, and some comedy. The Academy delivered.
And my eyes see Oppenheimer.
At the 96th Academy Awards, it was an explosive night for Oppenheimer. The film winning 7 Oscars, including Best Picture and Best Director for Christopher Nolan.
We don't know where this incredible journey is going from here, but to know that you think that I'm a meaningful part of it means the world to me.
Cillian Murphy also taking home his first Oscar for his leading role as Robert Oppenheimer.
For better or for worse, we're all living in Oppenheimer's world, so I would really like to dedicate this to the peacemakers everywhere.
Emma Stone.
Emma Stone's lively performance in Poor Things earning her second Best Actress statue, which she dedicated to her daughter.
Importantly, my daughter, who's going to be 3 in 3 days and has turned our lives technicolor. I love you bigger than the whole sky, my girl.
The acting wins all the more special with a new twist this year. Past winners introducing the new nominees.
America.
It was also a big night for first-timers.
Robert Downey Jr.
Robert Downey Jr. winning his first Oscar for his supporting role in Oppenheimer.
I'd like to thank my terrible childhood and the Academy in that order.
While Davon Joy Randolph cooked up a supporting actress win for The Holdovers.
For so long, I've always wanted to be different. And now I realize I just need to be myself. And I thank you. I thank you for seeing me.
The night was full of surprises, from John Cena bearing it all while presenting the Oscar for Best Costume Design.
Costumes. They are so important.
To Messi, the beloved dog from Anatomy of a Fall, applauding. To a Barbenheimer standoff. Emily Blunt and Ryan Gosling poking fun at the showdown that dominated the summer box office.
And the way this award season's turned out wasn't that much of a rivalry, so...
Still, Gosling proved he was Ken up with a spectacular performance of I'm Just Ken.
I'm just Ken.
The Barbie-themed bonanza featuring Slash on guitar. And a star-studded sing-along that had everyone feeling the Kenergy.
I'm just Ken.
And that electric performance from Ryan Gosling that had everyone in the theater on their feet, it had Emma Stone so excited, she popped open the seams on the back of her dress, just rocking out with her former La La Land co-star. Now, it was another song from Barbie that took home the coveted Oscar for Best Original Song. But get this, with that win, pop superstar Billie Eilish made history, becoming the youngest two-time Oscar winner at the age of 22. Wow. Guys, how about that?
That is amazing. 2 Oscars at such a young age.
That performance was also great, by the way. But
yeah,
oh my gosh, just the Ken one was too fun.
And now we have the Ken song in our head again for the rest of the day. All right, Kaylee, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Much more to come on this Monday edition of Morning News Now, including the brother of Princess Diana, Charles Spencer, now speaking out about alleged physical and sexual abuse he says he experienced as a young student.
But first, the growing fallout from that curious Republican response to President Biden's State of the Union by Alabama Senator Katie Britt. Stay with us.
Welcome back. Let's return to the fallout from those remarks that Alabama Senator Katie Britt made during the Republican response to the State of the Union address last week. The freshman senator was criticized for a story she told about a victim of human trafficking. She implied it happened in the United States and during President Biden's tenure.
But a journalist named Jonathan Katz looked into that claim and discovered that it actually happened in Mexico about 20 years ago during the George W. Bush administration.
For more on this, we're joined by NBC News senior national politics reporter Jonathan Allen. John, good morning. So walk us through this controversy and how exactly all of this was discovered.
Yeah, one of the oldest rules in politics is that if you're going to tell a story that is intended to bolster your point about public policy, that story better be right. And what you saw here, Katie Britt, the senator from Alabama, trying to basically show that the Biden administration has not been strong enough on border security and that there is, sex trafficking going on. But by the way, arguably true things, comes up with this story and says she met this woman who told her a story about, being abused coming to the United States, and of course turned out to be totally untrue. Not to say that the woman's story of abuse was untrue, but simply the details that it happened in the United States that it happened during the Biden administration were untrue. So now Katie Britt is backpedaling and looking for a way to try to make herself, seem like she wasn't telling a fib.
So over the weekend, she faced questions about this story. Tell us how she's responding to the allegations.
Well, she's trying to explain, what she meant, what the intent was, the sort of overall of the situation here. But it's a little late. The horse is out of the barn.
I think we have a soundbite. Let's listen to that.
Did you mean to give the impression that this horrible story happened on President Biden's watch?
No, Shannon, look, I very specifically said this is what President Biden did during his first 100 days.
Okay, but to be clear, the story that you relayed is not something that's happened under the Biden administration, that particular person.
Well, I very clearly said I spoke to a woman who told me about when she was trafficked when she was 12. So I didn't say a teenager. I didn't say a young woman, a grown woman, a woman when she was trafficked when she was 12.
So, John, I mean, this is obviously not what the GOP wanted to be talking about in the aftermath of the state union, especially as we gear up for the long general election fight ahead. What is it Republicans are saying just about these accusations and Senator Britt's response?
Yeah, I mean, on the other hand, just Joe, certainly they don't want to be talking about the, the accuracy of the issue, but they do want to be talking about the border. And so, to the extent that that issue is focused on, I think that that's something that they're not terribly uncomfortable with. What they are, what they're looking to do, though, is make a stronger case about individual incidents and the broader stuff that's happening under the Biden administration. So you saw Senator Britt there, trying to back away from what she said, but the border argument is one that's going to continue.
All right, John, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Well, the brother of Princess Diana, Charles Spencer, has alleged he was sexually and physically abused as a child by staff members at his boarding school.
In his new book titled A Very Private School, Spencer chronicles what he describes as years of abuse, and it is already causing shockwaves. Spencer sat down at his family's estate in the English countryside for his first interview about the book with NBC News senior investigative and legal correspondent Cynthia McFadden.
A happy memory from childhood.
Charles Spencer still has the little red jacket he wore standing next to his sister Diana at the local day school they attended together. From the beginning, she was his protector.
My first day there, the headmistress said Diana wouldn't settle in the classroom. And she said, go and check on him. And Diana ran out and came and looked into my classroom to see I was okay. And then she came back and said to the headmistress, he's fine.
But all that would soon change.
Within 4 years, I was 8, being sent off to a brutal place by myself, saying goodbye to Diana, who I grew up with.
His eyes stung with tears. He was headed to Madewell Hall, the all-boys boarding school he says he can't bear to remember, but will never forget.
We were like prisoners. We were prey to very bad people's worst instincts.
He says the worst of those bad people was the school's headmaster, Mr. Porch.
In my view, a pedophile and a sadist. And he staffed the school himself with either people who were going along with what he was doing or were going to be mute about it.
What was going on, he says, was not just bleak, but often criminal.
This is not a bunch of mid-teen, late-teen kids going through a rough school. This is children being sexually, physically, and emotionally abused on a daily basis.
We sat down with Spencer, a best-selling author and historian at Althorp, home to his ancestors since 1508. It's surrounded by over 10,000 acres of farm and parkland. Inside, priceless paintings by Van Dyck and others. It is also his famous sister's burial place.
So much of what you write about, I think, will leave readers speechless. So contrary to everything we think about the privileged life, all the money, the homes, being the godson of the queen, which you are.
I told a friend of mine about this recently, and he said, I just can't believe you weren't protected, as if coming from this incredibly privileged background somehow would be a protection against pedophiles and sadists. But there is no protection against those sorts of people.
Especially when secrecy is paramount.
The most important code of this very flawed regime was never to tell tales.
The secrets the 75 boys, all under 13, kept were dark.
Every week, at least half a dozen would be whipped with a cane. And we all had showers together after sports, and you could see the blood the split skin.
How could the parents not have asked questions?
I have a theory. So the old money there sort of thought, well, this is going to make my son tougher and more successful. And then people who had made money more recently thought, well, this is what they do, and we want to be part of this set.
He says abuse came from some of the teachers, too.
There was one particularly violent master, and he caught me by myself in a changing room going out to play cricket. And he just grabbed me and threw me over his knee. And cricket boots have spikes on them, metal spikes. And he beat me and beat me.
But what has truly haunted him was being sexually abused at the age he was in this portrait, 11. The predator, he says, a young adult female, a member of the staff charged with taking care of the young boys.
She would come round to my bed when others were asleep and kiss me, you know, French kiss, for ages. And it was so, if I was 17, 18, it would be a different thing, but I was 11. It was so confusing.
He says she was sexually abusing several other boys and having intercourse with at least 2 of them.
I mean, I'm embarrassed to say it was thrilling, especially in an emotional desert. But of course, it was terrible. She pretended she was going to have to leave early to keep us all on tenterhooks, really. And I remember cutting myself as a sort of, I thought if I hurt myself enough, then God will let her stay.
When he was 12, he says, and traveling with his mother in Italy, he secretly acted out the final scene of the sexual abuse from the year before.
I had not had sexual intercourse with the predator, and I took my pocket money and I lost my virginity to a prostitute, and at the age of 12, and I see that as the completion of what she had done to me.
Who's the first person you ever told what had happened to you?
A therapist when I was about 42.
You kept this inside?
Yes. And he said, whisper to me one thing you've never told anyone. And I said I was sexually abused by a woman when I was a child.
He dedicates the book to Buzz.
That was the nickname I had in my family before I went to Madewell. And that was the boy who had part of him snuffed out during those 5 years at the school. I wanted to reconnect with the carefree, happy little guy I was before I was sent to this place.
Well, Madewell School is taking his charges seriously and told NBC News in a statement they have now reached out to the local authorities charged with protecting children and will follow their guidance, they told us, about what to do from this point. And they also encourage anyone with similar experiences to come forward and contact those officials or the police.
And a key part of this is that he says he's not alone, right?
Absolutely. He interviewed over 24 of the men, then boys, who he went to school with, who were there during the period of roughly 1972 to 77. And he says some of their stories are even more horrific than his. You know, he's so keen to make sure that everyone understands he's not looking for sympathy. He is hoping this will promote healing. He is hoping that maybe this will give courage to some other kids who have been in a similar situation, maybe now grown adults.
Oh, all right. Cynthia McFadden, incredible reporting. Thank you so much. Thank you. Coming up, a spring break crime crackdown that's now putting some real pressure on businesses in Miami.
Why the police pressure there is not only cutting back on violence, but crucial profits, too. Stick around. That's next. Welcome back. Spring break is now officially in full swing for many schools around the country. But in Miami, a hot spot for the annual tradition, things are considerably calmer than in years past. NBC News correspondent Sam Brock joins us now from South Beach with more. Sam, good morning.
Yeah, Joe, Savannah, good morning. Look, we've been talking about this for a long time. This weekend was the test, one of the busiest of the spring break period, and the city passed with flying colors, Joe. I got to tell you that we're seeing success, not just from all the police officers, people saying they're seeing more officers than actual partiers, but also measures like this. You see barricades over my shoulder. They're stacked up now, but they were all up and down Ocean Drive and the street next to that and the street next to that, preventing parking and keeping chaos at a minimum, even as it was putting some pressure on local businesses. This morning, spring break, Miami Beach, and peaceful, all in the same sentence.
We've actually been surprised with how calm everything's been.
That's something we haven't been able to say in years. Did you think it was going to be a crush of people off of Ocean Drive?
Yeah, like it regularly be when we come.
I've seen more police than people.
To really get the full picture, it might help to see the beach from above, compared to recent years when unruly crowds and fatal shootings led to states of emergency, darkening the sun-soaked celebrations. This year, though, authorities cracking down to protect families and partiers alike. When you look around, what are you seeing today?
A lot of police officers.
And barricades.
But very friendly, smiling police officers. They're ready if anything happens.
Police making more than 140 arrests so far, utilizing DUI checkpoints and barricades to block parking, which you'll see in front of Tracy Ravel's store, The Baked Bear, on nearby Washington Avenue.
To know that our sales are down from the previous week pre-spring break, that's a huge impact for me. This one is the pistachio.
Ravel is grateful for the safety measures, but says the restrictions are eating into her profits by at least 20%. Can you fault the city for taking these steps?
It's kind of hard to fault them because, again, we want them to be safe. We don't want Miami to shut down. We want people to want to come to South Beach.
Right down the street. Under normal circumstances, how crowded would this restaurant be right now?
I will have at least half of the tables and maybe some people at the bar. I have no one.
Bolivar restaurant is empty at 6 o'clock on a Sunday.
Imagine, I mean, if you're a customer and you want to, you see, oh, look, a Latin American restaurant and you have no place to park, what can you do?
So this right here is devastating for business.
Yeah, this is devastation for us.
The upshot for the city and South Florida is that order is being restored.
I think that with the barricades and just the police presence is making everybody feel a little bit more comfortable.
In a place that's traditionally been a spring break haven for rowdy college students. Now, as millions again flock here to unwind, it's partying with parameters.
If you abide by the rules, you'll have a great time. If you break the rules, we will deal with you accordingly.
Now, those enhanced parking restriction measures are coming in chunks from Thursday through Sunday for each of the next 2 weekends as well. And guys, all of the parking garages here in South Beach closed for next weekend. Most of these measures extend through the rest of the month, but it is clearly working as spring break has been broken up with in Miami Beach. So far, it's been amicable. Joe and Savannah, back to you.
All right, Sam Brock, thank you. Here now, travel expert Mark Elwood to help us know about navigating the rules for spring break. Okay, so we went from one extreme, it appears, to the other.
Yeah, wow.
I guess the question is, could they find a happy medium, or is this what spring break might look like there for a while?
I think Miami is an exception, because I don't know if you've been to Miami on one of the party weekends, but it can feel, it can feel borderline post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, it was pretty bad, for sure.
You know what we're talking about. So
Yeah.
I think Miami is an extreme. I suspect once they bring in regulations like this, they will swing back next year to perhaps a happy medium. But it's a short, sharp shock. They're trying to make a statement.
Are we seeing extreme measures like this in other places? And if you're heading to them, I mean, how can you navigate it to, enjoy yourself at all?
I'll tell you, Panama City Beach is doing a similar, perhaps not as extreme, but very much controls on alcohol, no loitering in parking lots. Florida in general is recognizing that it's had a real problem with this kind of behavior. I think it's always about luck. If you do, as the police chief said there, if you do follow the rules, you're not really going to have any problems. Travel light, don't bring big bags that might need to be checked. Think of it a bit like going through the airport. How do you prepare? I think all things like that will mean that you can enjoy yourself without feeling like Big Brother is watching you on spring break.
So there's a lot of coastline around here.
Totally.
Are there other places to go that are fun, that are nice? What are some good alternatives?
Look, I would say, think about the Caribbean. You can go to U.S. Virgin Islands without a passport, so remember, you can have a Caribbean experience. I would also say, think about Europe. Just like Thanksgiving, for the rest of the world, it's just March. So you can get a flight to London this month. I checked, it's just over $500.
Wow.
So if you want to go to Europe, It's not going to be big crowds there. And in Italy, you'll have great weather this month.
That is really good advice. Mark Elwood, thank you so much. Good to see you.
Coming up, can Congress really ban TikTok?
It's a big question on a lot of people's minds this morning as we look ahead to a key vote on Capitol Hill this week that could signal the app's time, at least here in America, is running out. That's next on Morning News Now. We are back now with a look at lawmakers' efforts to crack down on TikTok.
This week, Congress is set to vote on a bill that could lead to the platform being banned nationwide. It's all leaving users worried that their time on the app might be hanging in the balance. Now, this morning, former President Trump told CNBC in an interview that TikTok was a national security threat, but that in his estimation, similar to the threat posed by other social media platforms like Facebook.
For more on this, we are joined by business and data correspondent Brian Chung. Brian, good morning. So let's kind of rewind a little bit because this is not a new concern. I was on the Hill like a year ago when the CEO was grilled. At that point, we've seen him several times actually on the Hill in different congressional hearings. So why is it now that this has come up again and that lawmakers are trying to crack down?
Yeah, well, I mean, some of this seems to be perhaps getting into the headlines ahead of an election, but all this boils down to exactly what we've already been talking about for many years, which is national security. So the lawmakers that are behind this bill, which, by the way, is bipartisan, have argued that because the Chinese parent company ByteDance owns TikTok, well, anything that's on TikTok in the use of here in America might be going back to the Chinese government, that the Chinese government might be getting all of that data. Now, TikTok, for its part, denies those allegations. They say that they operate independently, that their servers are all here in the United States. But nonetheless, there are still those concerns about what is the relationship between the data that TikTok collects and the Chinese government. So this bill would force TikTok to be divested by the Chinese parent company within 6 months. We'll see what happens. The House is set to vote on it sometime this week. Of course, it would still need the Senate's approval and then the White House before ultimately becoming into law.
It seems like lawmakers are between a TikTok and a hard place.
Yeah.
So where do things stand with the ban? And what else is TikTok saying in response to the possibility this could happen?
Yeah, so when it comes to where we stand right now, again, the House is set to vote on it this week, but it passed out of the committee on a 50-0 vote. So you never hear about that in this Congress. So it's bipartisan. But again, whether or not the president signs it into law is going to be the ultimate question here. The Biden administration has signaled that it would be interested in supporting this bill. But of course, anything could happen. We've heard a number of senators over the weekend say they're still kind of figuring out what this bill would mean. But even if it does get passed, the bill language says that it would take 6 months for it would basically start the clock for 6 months to ByteDance to sell TikTok off. If they can sell it, TikTok goes on completely, uninterrupted. But if they fail to sell it, that's when the ban's going to come into place. And TikTok says if that happens, it's going to destroy the livelihoods of the millions of creators that have built a reputation on this app. They've built businesses, in some cases, on this app. So they're pushing back. They had a notification last week calling on their users to call their local offices. So there's a lot going on here.
Yeah, and people are passionate. I mean, the lines were flooded. Yep. And actually, it appears like it sort of backfired because, A, it was just annoying that the phones were ringing off the hook.
Yep.
But also they used that geolocation sort of technology, which I think lawmakers saw as like, hey, isn't this kind of what we're concerned about?
Right.
That they have so much control. And 150 million people in the U.S. use it, more than that. What does this mean for people who do use it? I mean, I know like livelihoods, a lot of people make their money here, but also how would this actually go into effect should it happen?
Yeah, and by the way, I've already heard of anecdotes of users that are trying to maybe hedge their bets here and try to, boost a little bit of the posting on other sites, on YouTube, on Instagram. But again, it would not be a ban that would take effect once the House votes on this thing this week, right? So it's not going to be immediate. Once it gets passed by the House, then he's going to the Senate, then to the White House. Even after that happens, it would take 6 months minimum for that divestiture to happen. So if you think about it, right, this will take us closer to the election because it's March, right? And whether or not that actually happens, it also depends on the legal system, because there could be a ban that could be put in place, and once that 6-month clock expires, but maybe TikTok would pursue legal action where there would be a stay that would delay the actual implementation of the ban itself. So it's going to be some time before an actual ban happens. So for any TikTokers that are watching this, it's not like it's going to happen this week. But if that does happen, I mean, again, we were talking about this in 2020. Folks who lived in Montana faced a ban last year on this. So it's going to take a lot of time, but you're already starting to see users saying, there's the possibility that this might be happening. So they're posting elsewhere.
All right, Brian Chung, thank you.
More financial headlines. Delta is eyeing a potential delay in some aircraft deliveries from Boeing.
CNBC's Silvana Hanau joins us with that and other money news. Silvana, good morning.
Savannah, Joe, good morning to you. So the CEO of Delta Airlines expects deliveries of Boeing 737 MAX 10 planes could be delayed as far out as 2027, as the aircraft maker is the subject of federal safety and criminal investigations. Ed Bastian tells Bloomberg Delta had already been expecting the orders to be pushed until at least late next year. Delta has orders for 100 MAX 10 planes and options to buy 30 more. United pulled the MAX 10 from its fleet plan earlier this year due to extended delays. NVIDIA is being sued by 3 authors who say the chip maker used their copyrighted books without permission to train its AI platform. They claim their work was part of a data set to help the AI system called Nemo simulate ordinary written language before it was taken down in October. The authors are seeking an unspecified amount of damages. NVIDIA has declined comment. And Krispy Kreme is offering free donuts for St. Patrick's Day. The chain is introducing 4 new varieties and bringing back the popular original glazed donut in honor of the holiday. You can get them starting today and for a limited time at participating stores. Also, if you wear green while visiting a Krispy Kreme in-store or via the drive-thru this coming weekend, you can get 1 free original glazed donut.
I didn't know they got rid of the glazed donut, huh?
Me either.
I think it was maybe like, I don't think it was that. I think it was just some sort of like St. Patty's Day themed one. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
How can you get rid of the glazed donut at Krispy Kreme? No.
Right, exactly. Right. Savannah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, frustration is growing among millennials and Gen Z when it comes to the job market. Many are feeling it is too unstable to make a living. NBC News correspondent Julie Sirkin has more.
If you're on social media, chances are you've seen these videos all over your For You page.
I'm pretty sure I'm getting laid off today.
Job cuts, no matter the industry, can be found all over the headlines. So, to avoid being just another one of the more than 160,000 layoffs this year alone, Gen Z and millennials found a little hack, calling it quits on the private sector and going public. Many looking to lock down government jobs for security.
Public service was something I always wanted to do, besides the benefits, but also one of the reasons is because you were not going to get laid off versus private sector.
77% of the class of 2024 say they're more likely to apply to a job that promises stability. And that's what a government job offers.
We have to have a government. If we don't, our society is in trouble and our democracy as well. So it's not that your jobs are forever necessarily, but certainly the organization is there.
Salaried workers in the public sector hold their jobs for 3 more years on average than in private. And the younger generation is beginning to notice. #governmentjobs on TikTok has more than 23 million views.
Need to start applying to jobs with the federal government.
On a popular career site for college kids, federal jobs receive twice as many applications. The paycheck is probably smaller. On average, federal workers earned about 22% less than private sector workers with similar roles. But for many, the benefits are the selling point. Good health insurance, retiring early with a pension. Plus, after a decade, student loans are wiped clean for many. That's a perk nearly 70% say will influence their decisions. And of course, there's the work-life balance.
You do your job 9 to 5, and then you can enjoy your life after work and do what you want to do.
But right now, less than 8% of federal workers are younger than 30, and nearly half are over 50.
The challenge, though, is that the leaders in government don't often prioritize creating the opportunities for young people, ensuring that the managers know how to manage Gen Z and millennials, and making sure the process itself is not overly onerous.
Tamayo says the long process can be a big turnoff.
I tell them that it's going to take a minute, and when they say, "What do you mean a minute?" I'm like 5 to 6 months. They get very discouraged by it.
But for him, it's worth it.
You just have to be patient, because at the end of the day, you're going to get a secure job where you're not going to get laid off.
Our thanks to Julie Sirkin for that report. Coming up, a tightly knit band of brothers bonded by their love of the ice.
After the break, we're going to introduce you to the Mud Ducks, a hockey haven nestled in Minnesota. They're giving a vital sense of community to those who need it most. Stay with us.
We are back with a big win for the U.S. women's national soccer team. That's right. The team beat Brazil yesterday to win the inaugural CONCACAF W Gold Cup title. Midfielder Lindsey Horan scored the first and only goal of the game with a header in the first half. This was the fourth time the U.S. faced Brazil in a tournament final and also their fourth win. Yesterday's match drew a sellout crowd to San Diego's Snapdragon Stadium and a record turnout for a CONCACAF women's match. Pretty cool.
And some good news with the Olympics just around the corner.
There you go.
All right. We end this hour with the making of a mud duck. That's the name of a group of men in their 60s and 70s who spend their mornings playing hockey. Well, now they're adding new members to their flock. My dear friend Boyd Huppert of our Minneapolis affiliate KARE 11 has that story.
Ready? There you go. Alone is not the best way.
We got one.
To play hockey. That's a hit. But when Dad's not around, it is Matt Jenkins.
I got him.
Default.
Nonstop.
Denise and Morgan.
That's daily.
Say hockey is everything to their son.
How much do I like hockey? 100%, dude.
Matt is unique.
When he was born, there was some hintings there.
There was a genetic marker that was missing in his chromosomes. Developmentally delayed.
That's all they can tell us.
Delayed.
Yeah.
And delightful.
Don't do this at home. Got him.
Matt liked his high school years.
Game on.
And 3 more spent after graduation in his school district's transition program.
After that, here you go.
Missing his friends and structure, Matt found solace alone at the ice arena, where he also found them.
The Mud Ducks.
A group of men in their 60s and 70s.
It's our coffee clutch.
They said, you know, if you want to come at 9 o'clock when we start, you can skate with us.
Which is how 74-year-old Don Dreaman and 74-year-old Tom Watt ended up skating daily.
Bring it, man.
With 21-year-old Matt.
Nice shot. Don's a good teammate. Huh? You're a good teammate. Oh, thank you, sir.
They're his team.
That's where it all begins.
The team that thought Matt needed better gear, then bought it for him.
Get those pads on.
Including a jersey like theirs.
He sets his alarm every day.
Mud Ducks on it.
Sitting at the front door waiting.
That looks good.
Just when Matt needed new friends.
You look like one of us.
He is.
He found them.
Hey.
3 times his age.
They are everything to him. He comes home and he talks about them. So-and-so wasn't here today. They think he's sick. I hope he's okay.
The Mud Ducks don't play games. They just play. Enjoying hockey.
Attaboy.
And each other.
Oh, yeah.
It's been a blessing for everybody.
When Steve Burnham
Arnold
saw how Matt was thriving, he started bringing his own son, Will, who has autism.
Hey, look at that Will going.
Now learning to skate and getting encouragement from Matt.
We're doing good, Will.
What do you say? They let him be who he is, and they are inclusive.
Bye, Polly.
When we leave, he gives us a hug.
Thanks, Steve.
Means a lot. Wisdom born of age.
This is life, isn't it?
And friends
2, 3.
born of a flock.
Yeah, he's a mud duck.
Boyd Huppert, NBC News, Cottage Grove, Minnesota.
Minnesota nice on the ice.
There you go.
Love to
Oh,
see
he's
that.
a mud duck. Love it.
Thanks to Boyd for sharing that story with us. That is going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
Stay with us as the news continues right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.